Welcome back to Financial Independence 101. This is Mike. Today I want to talk to you about how I achieved financial independence in 2009, still debt-free, still have a positive liquid net worth, and I'm going to talk about those concepts. I'm going to talk about several concepts that I utilized to get there and kind of tell you what I've done. I am in no means a licensed financial counselor. I'm not giving anyone financial advice. I'm just telling my story, and hopefully you can get something out of it. But let's get into talking about how I became financially independent in 2009, still am today, coming up. Okay, first off, I want to talk about having the understanding of sacrifice. In order to eliminate debt, in order to get debt-free, you have to understand you're going to make a lot of sacrifices. I made a lot of sacrifices. I passed on a lot of things that I wanted to buy and things I wanted to do because my goal was to be debt-free. Debt-free by 2009 and stay debt-free forever. And that was my goal, and I'm still living it today, this very day, because of the same principles that I used to get there. And with that, sacrifice is an act of giving up something valued for the sake of something else regarded as more important or worthy. Getting out of debt, to me, is extremely important. Getting to that financial independence is extremely important. The next concept that I fully understood was the difference between net worth and liquid net worth. You have to understand that liquid net worth is your total assets, liquid assets, meaning cash, investments, savings accounts, stocks could be considered your liquid net worth, things that could be easily convertible to pay your bills. Minus your liabilities. So what all debt you have, student loans, auto loans, credit card debt. A house mortgage is also debt. A lot of people don't want to include that when they do their calculation of liquid net worth. But if you have a mortgage for $250,000 and you're sitting here saying that you're worth $50,000 because your house is worth $300,000 and your mortgage is only $250,000, you're not going to be able to convert that money without taking out another loan to pay your bills. So liquid net worth is extremely important, and getting up to a zero liquid net worth is really one of the first steps. Then what I did was I would look at my income and my expenses. Now, most people want to focus on the income and say, I just don't make enough. If you make $100,000 a year, but you're $1 million in debt, what good are you doing? Versus someone else that makes $25,000 a year and has a positive liquid net worth, meaning they have no debt and they have some cash in the bank, they're in a stronger situation. But so many times people focus on just the income side, but I want to focus on the expense side, which is what I did. Where's my money going and how can I spend less of that each month? And I did a lot of things. One of the biggest things I did was figure out how to reduce my food bill. Now, I did work in restaurants and I did get free meals a lot of times in restaurants. So one meal was covered 5 days a week or 6 days a week, depending on the week. 7 days a week, depending on the week and how many days out of work. But for the most part, I didn't buy brand name stuff. This is all food that's, you're going to eat it and it's going to be gone. This has no resale value at the end of it. And aside from the fact you have the health benefits, that you have to weigh those health benefits, and certain items you probably do want a higher value item, a higher quality item. But for the most part, I just went private label brands and got the food bill as low as possible. And we still do this to this day. My wife and I discuss food and prices every day, and we get values. We find bulk on meat to get $2.50 per pound on hamburger meat, and then divide it up into small bags, Ziploc freezer bags, and then we refreeze it, and then we use it in our pound at a time when we use our recipes and stuff like that. That is how we saved a lot of money with food. And I probably have to make an entire video on many ways that things we do today to save money on food. Aside from clothes that I bought for work, I had to look sharp at work, but I still was able to buy a shirt at Walmart for $10 and slacks for $12 to $15. Back then, I don't really know. Nowadays, it's a little bit more expensive, but not much. But food, clothes, just for fun, is a waste of money, in my opinion. To me, it was a waste of money buying a lot of expensive clothes. I would get clothes for a good price. And of course, this goes back to the concept of sacrifice. It goes back to the concept of what do you value more? Being out of debt, having a positive liquid net worth, or having a bunch of clothes that's going to wear out and be worthless over time. So the next concept is the income side of things. Are you going to get a side hustle? Are you going to get a job? There's all kinds of different side hustles. This is a nice little chart put together by a source at Yell.com. Uber driver, freelancer, transcriber, writer, artist, copywriter, proofreader. These are just ideas that you could put out there, but for the most part, you're going to be working in the service sector. Maybe you can get a job at a restaurant. Maybe you're going to get a job doing some Uber driving for restaurants. Maybe at Walmart, maybe at Target. They pay close to $15 an hour. So looking at your side hustles, there's got to be something. Maybe there's something that you enjoy doing, but you can make money at it and all those kinds of things. I see that all of the time. One thing I noticed getting a second job, my wife's always worked multiple jobs, and I've worked multiple jobs for a while. But this is something you got to be cognizant of. You have to understand that if you have, let's say you have a job and you make $20,000 a year, and your second job you make $20,000 a year. Now you doubled your income, but you're not being withdrawn for your taxes at the appropriate level. So you have to tax plan this. Generally, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have them withhold more, because if your job at $20,000 is going to only tax you at a certain tax rate, and we have a graduated tax system here in the U.S., so if you have a second job at 20, they're only going to tax you $20,000 tax rate. But if you had one job at 40, it would take out way more taxes because of the graduated tax rate system. At the end of the year, you could owe, and it could be financially devastating at tax time if you don't plan it appropriately. That is a downside to having a side hustle, but you always have to think about that when you have a side hustle, a side job, or you're working two jobs at equal pay. So next, once you've got income up, you've decreased your expenses, before you start going crazy at paying off your debt, before we pay off our debt, I had at least a 6-month emergency fund. Like, I could pay my bills for 6 months. And by the time we paid the house off, I actually could have lived a few years on paying all the bills without working. That's very important. The reason that the emergency fund is so important is because if something pops up and you need $1,000, you're generally going to end up putting it on what is the highest interest rate, the most expensive way to get that money to pay for it. Or what's going on right now in the US is lack of access to that $1,000 that you need for an emergency. You might only be able to get $400. You might not be able to bring that money up for an emergency. My mindset was 6 months emergency fund. So the next thing is to decide, what do you pay off first? Now, for me personally, I had no credit card debt, no car loan, no student loans, but did have a mortgage. And so that was my goal. And it was really easy to do that. And there's a lot of different ways to tackle it. And I've heard many different ways to do it. I actually lump sum paid it off in 2009, but there are some things that you can do. Starting with tips for paying off credit card debt. And you might want to look at strategy. And this is something that is individual to everybody. For me personally, it was a lot easier because I just had one goal in mind and I just worked towards it every single day. But number one, people say overpay the minimum. And so instead of $125 every month on that credit card, then you pay $200 on that credit card. And then you pay it off a little earlier. Instead of 30 years, it takes you 20 years. Something along those lines. But that did not work for me. I'm not a big advocate of that. I don't feel like I'm making enough headway on it. There's the prioritizing debts by the smallest balance or the highest APR. And I kind of think that for me, it would be a lot easier to say, hey, the smallest balance, so I feel like I've done something. I can just lop off one of those and be like, I've achieved a goal. Analytically, if you just think about it logically, you'd want to go after the highest interest rate, the highest APR. You would want to pay that down because in the long run, you're actually making more headway by paying off the higher interest rate debt first. But a lot of times it might be the highest number. It might be the biggest balance. So there's a lot of factors to consider. It's all what's relative to you. And I do not suggest using a personal loan to pay off credit cards or balance transfers, those kinds of things. You get caught up in all of that. But then again, it's what is good for you. So I think it's really important at a point which you start decreasing and cutting your expenses. You have a goal in mind that I want to pay this off. I want to start by paying off the credit cards. Then I want to do the car. Then I want to do the house. However you want to do it. But for me personally, I had to have that goal in mind all of the time. And there were a lot of distractions. There were a lot of obstacles to overcome. I had house issues where a pipe would bust, and I had another issue with the drain messed up. And now I've got insurance, different type of insurance that covers that. But that was all money that was out of pocket. There's nowadays in 2024, we've seen a 40% rise in insurance rates on house insurance. And then, of course, we see food and all that stuff going up. There's a lot of things that pop up that you have to deal with, and it can feel like it derails you, but you got to keep that end in mind. I want financial freedom. I want to be able to get to financial independence. Step 6 here. And with that, you just have to overcome. I overcame a lot of things in my time to get to that financial independence, and I gotta say that I still overcome stuff just like that every single day. Now, getting back to this graph here, once you pay off something, so once you actually have gotten somewhere, like let's say you paid off your credit cards, or only one credit card and you have 3 credit cards you're paying off, you should have excess money to allocate towards your next venture. So one credit card payment is $125 and you're paying $300 a month on it. Now, once that's paid off, you have that whole $300 a month to allocate towards another expense. So another credit card, you're paying $125 a month. Put that $300 on there, and you could be paying $425 on that credit card till it's paid off. And always remember, keeping the end in mind, you're not running a balance up on these credit cards anymore, and you're learning by going through sacrifice and pain to get somewhere. But as you go, it should get easier. It should start getting easier. You start seeing more success. You should start pay stuff down a lot faster, because you're going to get to a point where now you have $1,000 a month to put on this credit card, put towards your auto loan, put towards your mortgage. And then once the auto loan's paid off and the credit cards are paid off and you have no other debt but the house mortgage, and then you could go the way I did and say maybe you just save up and lump sum pay it off. Which, by the way, lump sum payoffs usually have about $300 to $500 additional fee for early payoff, which sucks. Now, let's say you've been doing this for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 12 years, however long it takes. And I say it took me 2009. Well, I was working on it from the time I was 12 till 2009. We did take the loan out for the house in 01, but 8 years is what it took me to pay the house off. So let's just put it like that. But looking at it like this, looking at it from this standpoint, when you get to a zero liquid net worth, where you have no debt and you have a little savings because you still have your 6-month emergency fund or 3-month emergency fund in the bank, then you start looking at building true wealth. All right, at the point which you achieve financial independence and you have a positive liquid net worth, you have no debt, and you have money in the bank, and that's growing every month, and you're able to save $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month, and you do that for several years until you build up a nest egg. Then you take your nest egg and you start to invest it. Now, I'm not going to give any investment advice. I'm not going to say buy this stock. I'm not going to say, well, I will say, I'm not touching the bond market ever again. The U.S. bond market, I will never touch the U.S. bond market ever again after GM. But I'm not giving any financial advice going forward other than what I've done in the past and shared my experiences. But if you have got a positive liquid net worth, and the behaviors that got you to that will take you to financial independence. And we're looking at a great time to have some cash on the sidelines, because we're seeing the highest interest rate in a long time. So this is fantastic to be able to do that. I know a lot of this interest rate's working against you to get out of debt and get into a positive liquid net worth. But once you get to that financial independent state, you're going to be reaping the rewards of a higher interest rate. Don't know how long it's going to last and how long they're going to keep the rates up there. I don't know if they're going to raise them more this year, although they say they're going to lower them. They may actually do an increase in the rates, but it's a good time to have cash on the sidelines. I hope this video helps people. I hope sharing my experiences help people. Let me know in the comments below. Financial Independence 101 out.